There are lots of ways to explore outer space, but there's an inner world as well. So let's explore beyond light and sound and time and space. Join us as we listen in to an experienced inner naut. Get introduced to a new language to describe uncharted, inverted space. We enter through the portal of dreams.
The meditation dream was something that started from a position where something was stale, strung out, backwards, obsolete, needing to change, and had gotten overly pent up over the course of time. It started from a position like that. The condition is something that is extended as if it covers everybody equally. It's kind of like how grace is. The environment is going to have everybody covered and you can just truck along with that. Well, that's no longer something that works. Extending out like an amnesia, it has to be brought to a state of attention. Responsibility brought back into focus. And so the meditation dream starts off with you owing monies. You are trying to keep things stabilized as a collective consciousness norm. When you're owing monies, that means that there's an atmospheric weight that's placed on you so that you're not clear and succinct with your own frame of reference the way you're supposed to be. And then what happens is, I'm quick. I'm awakened from that. I'm alerted to how I can't keep passing the buck and staying in this downer mood the way everything is going downhill and falling apart. So suddenly I snapped out of this, and when I'm snapped out, then I look at the collective consciousness around me and I use my focus and attention and I smack it. It's too much because they've gotten used to this malaise. It's hard for them to take this. Well, the problem is it has gotten to the point where it's too late as it is. In another couple or 3 years, it's going to go down for the count. Anyway, it's better to be hit now because a couple or 3 years from now, it's going to be much worse if you could keep punting and pushing this down the road. So I'm going at this in terms of fixing this in meditation. And it comes to the conclusion that instead of me owing money, I'm not going to owe much at all. And then a little voice says, it might be a good idea if this works out, that you owe a little more just for appeasement purposes. You still can't tell because the local news is being cloaked and hidden all of a sudden. I used to know exactly what all that was and kept on top of it. Now all of a sudden it's being concealed. But if the local news is all out there, it's probably going to work out right on all the things. But then because I've started to pay attention to the whole schematic, I now have access to go through areas where I never paid any attention to before. And so I'm looking for the local paper. And I walk into an area that's a part of where I normally don't go. And in this area are papers with the national news spread out and scattered. Now, because I've focused my attention to look at it all, it's okay for me to go into this area. Otherwise, it would be bizarre, and I wouldn't be able to do that. I've extended my attention out to a bigger macro picture of things, instead of having gotten myself noodled down into such a small focus that I become a sicko myself. I can't find a local paper. I'm still looking for the local paper, and I've come across the national paper, and it was scattered around amongst these people. It's just depicting that I have to extend my perspective and influence in a focus and attention. It brings things into a responsibility in a much bigger way. When I first came onto the path of waking up in terms of inside myself, I was told that to begin with, you work on yourself. You've got issues that have to be bugged out. But eventually there comes to a point where your attention shifts to a bigger picture. But to begin with, you can't because you're in such dire shape just in terms of your own complexes. you're not meant to be twisted up in terms of your own complexes, because it's not about you. But you have to go through and delve into the depths of yourself before you can take on what it's really about. What is the whole, the overall. So it's never about you. But to start off with, you can't get that memo because of the way things are striking you and occupying your frame of reference. So then I had a sleep dream, which tends to show how you're inclined to be working with things. In this particular case, I would be shocked if you didn't do the same thing. The sleep dream was such that it shows you kicked back into a malaise. It just goes nowhere. In Cindy's dream, she's in this huge ancient castle, so again, time is something kicked backwards, and within this castle is a small chapel. And she's going to have a wedding. Is it going to be a big wedding or a little wedding? Nope, it's going to be a little wedding because it's a little bitty chapel. But at the same time, what's the wedding going to be like? She's carrying anger or frustration as the thing begins, so it ends. She's carrying that into the wedding instead of it being something that can be alive and quickened. It is something that is dull and deadened. You know, a wedding is supposed to be a rejuvenating time of one's life, and this is just doo-doo-doo, and just a thing that continues in its stupor and amnesia. In my sleep dream, I'm in a town which is as boring could be. They roll up the sidewalks at 6 p.m. Everybody's asleep, and there's a local store which is the center of town. There's nothing at all vibrant or exciting about that. In fact, they're in a malaise of decay. Local vagrants that don't have anything better to do just sit outside the store leaning against the wall. Their life is going nowhere. Then some other poor character comes up with a roll cart that opens up and he can sell merchandise. He puts it on store property, opens it up, and sells out of that, undermining the store. Well, the whole thing's just vibed out, the opposite of the meditation where it started out haywire, caught in a malaise, and then got snapped out of it. So I flipped back to how it is in the outer, where something has to be quickened, awakened, and enlivened in order to break a malaise. This is all a continuation of a longer theme that has to do with the shift which is upon us. We can't make the shift in the same old fashion as it's been for the previous 2,000-year era. We've just been kicking the can down the road and dealing with things in a collective consciousness which will now have to be dealt with, but much more responsibly. Just like a person, when they delve into the depths of themselves, they find themselves caught in a kind of collective consciousness in a stupor state. When they break out of the stupor state, then they come to recognize that they are actually a composite of the whole, and that the aliveness is the whole. They have to start paying attention and working as a oneness of themselves and not as a me, myself, and I navigating about for one's own edification. The dream world was interesting. I might have been confused, but the fact that Cindy did something that copied what I did as my dream, well, I don't know what to make of this. I'm having this breakthrough, and all of a sudden I'm 180 degrees from it and gone back into dopity-dope. The meditation dream started with dopity-dope, trying to be extended upon me. And the image was like owing money, but not really, because when I dealt with it with a focus and attention, it turned out I didn't owe anything at all. Then came a matter of whether to try to be a little bit diplomatic, because it was going to be a shock. If all of a sudden you're not part of the malaise of things and trying to fit. And so I went through in the meditation this idea of, do I pretend and take a little bit on, just for the purposes of mediating the situation a bit? And the answer was no, because that set something up wrong because of the local awareness of things. They're even trying to hide that to get away with what they're doing, which means that all I would be doing would be accommodating it. If you're going to bring the knife down, bring it all the way down. Don't go halfway down and leave the guts hanging out to come back and haunt you. So the meditation dream had a succinctness about it. And then the sleep dream shows me the other extreme in its full apathetic stupor. Then you come in, try to bring back the yesteryear of a once prosperous Western mining town. It's just like a state of decay into malaise from something that was wonderful from yesteryear. It was the opposite in my meditation dream. I went from something that was putrefied, working to go back to something that was in a state of attention and focus and was something incredible. But the application of it in the environment around me is still strung out and stupered out and bizarred out. It can't seem to get its act together. You can't keep expecting the environmental vibration to change of its own accord. It needs a state of attention, brought to try to enliven, quicken, and refresh, to invigorate again. I see a different kind of approach taking into account what's going on.
Listening In is a part of the Nameless podcast. Nameless, Evolution Begins Within, is available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and all major platforms. Or go to our website, thenamelessshow.com, for more information. Copyright 2021 under Sophia Unity Foundation, where wisdom is one.